I am NetMoverSitan. Welcome to the Talos Principle 2 Orpheus Ascending. This is one of the DLC stories that I'll be going through.
I think that's it. The new body's ready for the transfer. How's the reassembly algorithm?
Done.
Well then, somebody just needs to go in there and disentangle the data. Ah, and here comes our expert.
Thank you for agreeing to this, 1K. Perhaps together we can right an old wrong. When I was lost in my own grief, I spent a lot of time thinking about Hypatia and Cerebi. How they found each other, how they lost each other, and how beautiful it would be if we could reunite them. For the longest time, it was only a daydream, but not anymore. In the myth of Orpheus, the ancient bard descends into the underworld to bring back his beloved wife, who died in a tragic accident. With the power of his music, he convinces Hades and Persephone to free her. But he is told that she must walk behind him, and he must not look back at her until they have left the underworld. And so, of course, in every version of the myth, he looks back. Because he doesn't trust the gods, or because he is an imperfect man, or because he simply forgets. And death is triumphant once again. We've accepted that triumph for a long time, because we had to, because what else could we do? But the world changes, and we are not the frightened, powerless creatures we once were. Perhaps it's time to say enough, and let Orpheus complete his ascent. You will have to collect all of Cerebi's data fragments so that we can reconstruct her personality. I'll monitor you from here, just like last time.
Good luck, kiddo.
I don't think it'll be exactly like last time. Considering that there's a golden gate. And it looks like I'll need to do much in order to unlock it. Well, I'd best get started, considering that... Yep, just as I thought. Puzzles. no, I can't just run across there. And no, the solution isn't outside of the puzzling. That really sets the scene for this, doesn't it? A series of puzzles beamed around a civilization that is long dead. Yes, I need to find a way of getting both beams where they need to be, while also being able to get across. Not quick enough. Perhaps this will help me with figuring out the first puzzle. Yes, I need to find a way of getting the beam where it needs to be, while also making sure that everything in the way is removed.
When I was born, the first thing I felt was that I was alone. Not that I was lonely, but that I was separate, singular. There was the world, and there was myself, a contained entity. And this sense of separation, of of a distinct self was delightful. Individuality itself was a source of constant joy and wonder. What could be more incredible than to be able to say, I am?
We have the first fragment. Everything's looking good on our end.
And now I'm about to get the second one.
As I grew, I realized that the more I developed this sense of self, the more enjoyable it became simply to exist. It wasn't selflessness that improved existence, but refinement of the self. When the ancients said that ego is something to set aside, they got it all wrong. Ego is something to nourish and shape, a work of art.
The reconstruction's working. Keep going, 1K.
Right, let's see what I need to do here. That pressure plate controls that. Yes. It looks like I'll need to use the accumulator. That, and I need to make sure that the beam can actually... Problem solved!
My insights into the value of the self were genuine, I think. But of course, I was completely inexperienced. In fact, in many ways, I was like a human child. So I began to resent everything that intruded on that sense of self. My social obligations to the others, the leadership of Athena and Cornelius, even the obvious limitations imposed on us by our situation. Why did I have to exist in this particular historical moment, saddled with the task of reconstructing civilization?
I'm not sure myself, but I was somehow successful. Well, what I did, anyway. Right, so there's a connector here, and I can see a problem. I need to get a blue beam over there, while also making sure that it isn't interrupted by the red beam. And to do that, I'll need to have the blue beam uninterrupted by putting the connector on the pressure plates.
With that focus on the self, also came an enormous and increasingly overwhelming fear of death. The pleasure of existence seemed almost erased by the possibility of its ending. If it was possible not to be, if the self had an ending, even in the distant future, then how could anything have meaning? I spent far too much time imagining that last moment. The moment just before I stopped existing. How could I possibly face that?
If you get stuck, I've inserted some code that might help you bypass a few puzzles. It's not the most elegant work I've ever done, but it'll do the job.
Looks like something will activate here once all of the puzzles are solved. And it looks like when I solve what's around there, the Golden Gate will. Lever and looks like I'll need to select the right point to have a blue beam. It needs to be just enough to get all the blue receptors lit up. But it needs to be not so strong as to interfere with the red connectors. That's a bit too strong. That's strong enough.
Looking back, it's embarrassing how solipsistic I became. I really thought that I could construct my identity without any reference to the outside world. Like I could just will myself into existence. But it just didn't work. And it made me miserable. Everything felt hollow and meaningless, overshadowed by the idea of death. There was something I wasn't seeing, something I needed, but I couldn't figure out what it was.
Right, 2 accumulators and need to have both lit and Those connectors. I don't think they're just here for show. I need to use them to extend the beam so that it's strong enough to balance it out. Because there's more connectors on one side than the other. Perhaps it could work if I have the accumulator connected to a chain of connectors, which... Oh yes. I did consider that, and it failed.
Everything changed when we started spending more time with each other. Do you remember that night when we found the old library in the Dead City? It was just after the stampede and we were all a bit shaken up. Byron read to us from one of the books, and later you and I started arguing about one of the poems. And your perspective was so different and interesting, and I just kept wanting to hear more.
Right. I need to use the gaps to get the beams, and I need to place these in specific locations. In such a way that it lights up the right receptors.
I never really understood the appeal of philosophers who tell us that everything is one. If everything is just a reflection of yourself, an endless hall of mirrors, there's nothing to connect with. And what I realized through our conversations is that everything beautiful happens in that space of connection between one person and another, and between people and the world. That gap between us is necessary. Because without it, without separation, there can be no transcendence.
Right. And this is another example of the beam strength needing adjustments. Because it's only just not strong enough. Not sure why it isn't working. Because it should be working, considering the... must be missing something. Yeah, it doesn't stay open long enough.
Once I understood that meaning comes from the interaction of the self with the world, I found it easier to be patient, to be kind. I reminded myself that other people are just like me, and nobody really knows exactly what they're doing. And the more I allowed myself to open up, the more interesting and complex our interactions became, and the more meaningful.
We have roughly 50% of Sarabai's personality matrix reconstructed.
Who'd have thought that 1K would have made such a good necromancer?
I'm not sure what I did with puzzle 8, but... I see what I need to do here. I need to cut this off, get the beam dominant, drop it down, repeat until the hexahedron is accessible. I'm overcomplicating this again, aren't I? So definitely, well, yes. This has served its purpose. I just need the hexahedron to get up there.
It's funny, though, when I think about it, that I still didn't know what to call what I was experiencing. I guess love seemed like a term that only applied to our ancestors, with their hormones and instincts and strange fleshy organs. Surely we were too different to experience that. And the really funny thing is that I was thinking exactly like an ancient human child, pretending I was above it all.
Evidently not. Yes. And what is... part of an ancient human skeleton? And I had best not stray too far from the puzzle. Well, seeing as there's no connectors for me to set up manually, I can tell that how this works is that I interrupt the beams to make things happen.
What I'd never considered was that stripped of biological necessity, and physical need, as well as all the strange stigmas and taboos our ancestors associated with their bodies. Love might be more pure, more powerful, that we can love with fewer distractions than they could. And so the experience is all the more overwhelming. I do think we should learn to simulate some of those biological processes. Would be fun.
Mr. Miltheim is back. And now he's gone again. Right, where were we? Yes, the next puzzle. It's one of these again, isn't it? I need to interrupt these beams in such a way that I can get a blue beam to become a red beam, and then to make the red beam open the way to the next fragment. Yeah, sounds simple, but it rarely is. And this is unlikely to be any different. This isn't going to work. I need to have an inverter on one side and an inverter on the other to make this work. Left and right.
When we started living together, I thought I'd figured it all out. Everything would be smooth sailing from now on. I still had so much to learn about love. Even for us, it's messy. You find someone who seems to be the perfect match for you, who seems necessary in your life. And then you realize all the ways in which you don't fit together at all. Because nothing in this world is perfect.
Yeah. I need to set this up so that the two blue sectors are absorbed well, while also making sure that the red one isn't interrupted. This is probably going to take a while. Eleven fragments have been gathered, but there's still more that remains before the reconstruction is complete. Until next time, hail the rabbit!